Hi everybody, welcome to episode 6 of Satellite 664. I'm one of your two co-hosts, Kaz Tagyan, and as always I'm joined by Mr. Steve Loopy Newhouse from Romford, Essex. Good morning, mate, how are you?
Yeah, pretty good, mate. Pretty good. How
It's
you doing?
it's good. It's morning for both of us, isn't it? Because it's seven.
It's 25 past 11 p.m.
Oh, it's still Thursday for
Yeah,
you, Friday for me. All right.
yeah.
Look, we are on today's show. We are going to start a series of shows that we're going to do, focusing on a particular album and a particular era. And we've been talking about doing this for a long time. The initial plan was to do it as a series in order, in chronological order, but because of scheduling issues with certain guests that we'd like to have on, we're just going to have to do it in whatever order we can. So today we're going to focus on 1983, Peace of Mind, an era and an album which is very special to me personally because that's when I discovered the band. I became a Maiden fan just a couple of months before Peace of Mind came out, and Peace of Mind was actually my first new album, my real new album. So close to my heart, and an album which I think is a masterpiece to this day.
It was also the last Maiden tour while I was actually working for them. It was the last Maiden tour I ever did.
Wow, fantastic! Because you were on the UK tour, weren't you?
Yeah. I sort of picked that up. I was driven to Southampton by Keith Wilford. There was a few of us went down in his car, and after the show, we went back to the band's hotel, and I got chatting with like the band, obviously, and I got chatting with a guy called Warren Poppy again. There's his name, um, and he said, "Can you do me a favour? Can you go home and pack a bag, and we'll meet you in Ipswich? So I'm going to take you around the rest of the UK tour," which is what I did.
Mm.
So yeah,
Yeah. So actually, we should tell the listeners today's episode we're focusing on the album itself. Our next episode will be the World Peace Tour, and we're going to really get into some of the guts of that tour. So some interesting stories out of that for sure. Now we should set the historical landscape. 1983 was a year unlike any other in the music industry because you had in every genre of music enormous superstars, which were fledgling and successful all at the same time. So, in the pop world, Michael Jackson had Thriller out. Madonna had just released her new album. In the UK, the new romantic scene was quite big at that time. So Duran Duran were established, Spandau Ballet, ABC, those sorts of bands were quite big on the charts. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, the Sunset Strip scene was about to explode in a big way with bands like Motley Crue, Rat, Quite Right, Dokken, all about to hit quite big. And then you had, obviously, in England, the new wave of British heavy metal with bands like Def Leppard and Maiden, who were growing quite big. So Def Leppard had released Pyromania that year, and they were about to hit quite big commercial success in America. And as we know, Maiden had just released A Number of the Beast, finished the tour, and Peace of Mind is really the album which I think catapulted their career to a different level of fame. So 1983 I thought was a unique year. I've not really seen anything like it in the music industry before that or since that time. So it was quite interesting. So to set the scene, Clive Burr had just exited the band. Quite well documented issues with subpar performances because of his sort of partying, and the band had already had ties with Nico McBrain, His French band Trust had opened for Maiden back in '81 on the Killers tour, and Nico had actually played as Eddie, wearing an Eddie mask on a TV show in Germany or Belgium. I can't quite remember.
I don't know. I mean, if anybody actually knows the answer to that, then please leave a comment below. I thought it was Germany, but I wasn't there, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, that would be good if somebody can clarify that. One of our listeners probably was there. So in January of that year, the band all packed their bags and went to the Channel Islands to write the album, and that was the first time they'd written away from England. Libby, why the Channel Islands? Do we know why they specifically chose that location?
I wish I knew. I mean, we know what the band are like. They do like to chase the weather. But why Jersey in the middle of the Channel Islands? Middle of the English Channel. It doesn't make any sense. The only thing I can think of is it had something to do with the UK tax laws. Now, Jersey, well, the whole of the Channel Islands are, although they're related to the United Kingdom, they are pretty much on their own. You know, they're like a principality, if you like. Now, the UK tax laws states that if you're in the UK, if you're a big earner and you're in the UK for more than 63 days a year, then you have to cough up the full amount. If you stay in the country less than 63 days a year, then your tax is obviously lower, or you virtually pay no tax at all. And I think that's a lot to do with it. You know, again, you know, why take a little band that recorded the first 3 albums in the UK and probably in London, and then all of a sudden whisk them off to Nassau in the Bahamas? You know, it's you know, why do that? And I think it's all to do with tax.
Yeah, is that tax law? Is that tax law applicable to even now in today, or was it?
I don't know how it works now. That's how it was back then. Again, if anybody knows better, then please put a comment below.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, we're sure to
I just did my job and got on with it.
Yeah, we're sure to have an accountant or somebody who understands the business and sort of tax climate in our viewership. So
yeah, there's bound to be somebody out there that knows more than we do.
Yeah, well, yeah, and we also writing in the Channel Islands also shed some light into how the band actually wrote, because Steve Harris used to write in seclusion, so he'd stay in his room in sort of tranquility and silence and write that way, whereas Bruce and Adrian, who are the other 2 chief songwriters of the album, on the album, used to set up their gear in the ballroom there and play and write with a lot of noise and loud volume.
Yeah, don't forget. I mean, I wasn't there for the writing and recording of Peace of Mind, but I was there for the writing and recording of Power Slave. And if Power Slave is anything to go by, it was pretty much that. Steve would be on his own. He'd be sitting there like plodding away, like doing what he needed to do. And yeah, it was. I think the whole time I was actually at that hotel, Le Chalet in Corbière, little place called Corbière in Jersey. We took over the whole hotel, band and crew. There was the only members of staff in the hotel was a receptionist and a manager. And we just had the whole place to ourselves. The band had obviously paid for everything, so you just help yourself to whatever's at the bar, with 3 meals a day. Yeah, it was all cool. But that sort of writing, yeah, going by from what I remember from Power Slave, it was just little bits and pieces here and there. You know, if the band actually all got together and rehearsed together for an hour a day, that was a shock. You know, it was just everybody had their own agenda, everybody had their own things to do, and it's quite surprising, really.
Yeah, it's interesting. Um, so now Derek Riggs was at Compass Point or during the during the recording of Peace of Mind, doing the artwork for what became
That I don't know. That I,
yeah.
again, because I wasn't there, I don't know.
No, well he was,
I
and
don't know where he did that.
no, he did. Well, he was there for both Power Slave and Peace of Mind, and it's quite curious. Why did they fly him over to do the artwork when the band were recording in the same location? Was it, well, do you think, in your opinion, was it for Derek to get a feel of the music and put that to
Uh,
put that to art?
well, I mean, I know Derek fairly well, and I do know that he's really not interested in the music.
Mm.
You know, it was a case of being wherever he was told to be to, to do his work. But uh, well, again, when they recorded Power Slave, Power Slave was um, it was so hot out there that when Derek was trying to paint, the humidity was affecting his work. So he ended up coming back to the UK to actually. I actually saw him painting the artwork for Aces High,
Mm.
and I took a photo of it. Which, if anybody's got the book, they'll know what I'm talking about. Um, but why fly him out there? He knew what he had to do. There's an interesting story about the cover for Peace of Mind. I was chatting with a friend of mine when I was in New York, and he wanted that cover painted on the back of a denim jacket. And it turns out it's almost impossible to do because it's two different paintings. The Rubber Room behind is one painting. The 3D Eddie over the top of it is another painting. And the
Wow.
two spliced together. Only Derek Riggs could do something like that.
Wow. And well, actually, that's we should talk about the actual artwork itself. So um, it is Eddie, a lobotomized Eddie. So they decided in transitioning from Number of the Beast, where he was in hell and in combat with the devil, to lobotomize him, put him in a padded room, which is floating in the sky. Um, which is probably really one of the most iconic pieces of artwork the band have ever done. Really. So, well, let's talk about the album. Let's talk about the songs itself. So you've got
I think also with that cover, it just when you think about like the whole lobotomized thing, he's had his brain taken out, or his brain's been worked on, but Eddie still functions. He's still a bloody nightmare, and he's got no brain. It just goes to show that Eddie is Eddie, and he always will be.
and that's why we love him. So,
Yeah, you don't need a brain.
now, side one. Side one opens up with a bombastic Nico McBrain drum fill on Where Eagles Dare, and they obviously cover one of their favourite sort of themes, which is sort of war. And there's a few songs on this album which deal with war, and not made up battles either. I mean, these were historical events. So Where Eagles Dare was more set in World War II, in the Bavarian Alps. We then go on to another theme that the band have always consistently in their career covered, and that's religion and spirituality. And we've got Revelations, and funnily enough, both those songs feature quite prominently on the current tour. Now, Revelations is interesting because even on the back cover of the Peace of Mind album, there's a quote from Revelations chapter 14, which the band have put a pun on, and they've replaced the word pain with brain. It was quite clever, but what the unintended consequences of that was felt in America, particularly in the Bible Belt south of America, because 1983 was also at the time where a lot of the evangelical religious fundamentalists turned on popular music, and it wasn't just metal. I mean, it was all types of pop and rock music that they turned on. But the metal bands in particular were leveled with accusations of Satanism and devil worship, and you had these twits, burning records, burning books, similar to a certain fascist party in the 1940s that used to do stuff like that as well. So,
Yeah,
and
I can see that.
yeah, and you see footage even to this day of sorry, not to this day. You see footage from that era where you've got these people lining up outside of concerts, and even in some cases inside the venue with signs. Basically, you're all going to go to hell. That sort of message, that sort of vibe. Now, that was something a lot more prominent in the United States. Certainly, we here in Australia didn't have that outside of gigs, but as a young sort of school student, whenever I used to wear an Iron Maiden shirt to school, I still felt that attitude from people, where people would see Eddie and they'd see the artwork, or imagery from the various bands' T-shirts that you wore, and those accusations would fly off. This is devil's music. This is sort of Satanism, and it's interesting that the band had to face those accusations at a professional level, and we as fans had to also deal with that and constantly be on the defensive as fans. It's this is something the younger fans, I think, don't understand and wouldn't understand because times have changed so much now, and Iron Maiden are now pretty much, a household name and almost universally respected. Whereas in the early '80s and right through the '80s, it wasn't like that.
No, it's to be perfectly honest, I can just see the band now. Seeing all these banners and the people outside, all the big protest banners, and you worship the devil, blah blah blah. I can just see the band now just laughing their heads off because they would have seen it as funny. Right. In the UK, there's the religion thing is a lot more relaxed than it is in America. A lot more relaxed. You take a lot of it with a pinch of salt. And I'm not putting religion down by any means. I'm not religious myself, but I'm not going to put it down. But I think these people in the States really need to sort of wise up a bit. There's a bigger world out there, and than what God does. To me, it doesn't make any sense. But again, as I said, I'm not religious. I don't know.
My understanding, and again, we welcome any of our American friends to comment and tell us. But my understanding is, in some venues, in some parts of America, you still do get these sorts of protests, albeit on a much smaller scale. Now, I on this recent tour, I saw a few shows in the northeast of the US. I didn't see a single protester. I didn't see anybody with placards or signs. But
I think they've actually learned to stay away.
Yeah, well,
if you're going to get say an 18,000 capacity arena, you can have 18,000 Iron Maiden fans. You don't have a bunch of people standing around outside, but chances are You're gonna have the shit beaten out of them
Mm.
for saying something against Iron Maiden.
Mm.
Maiden have now become that big.
Mm.
You know, that kind of thing could happen.
I have seen some video footage at Kiss concerts now where people are standing around protesting, and even at the Nam guitar show in California, I've seen some videos on YouTube with sort of Christians preaching. So it is quite unusual. I mean, it certainly doesn't happen here. It doesn't happen in Europe. Doesn't happen in England. I'm wondering, is this something idiosyncratic and specific to certain parts of the US? It's
Yeah,
but
it can only be that.
yeah.
You know,
But
it, it,
I look back on it now, Loopy. I look back on it now as more of a historical footnote because it just I don't experience it anymore. It just doesn't happen anymore. But as a teenager back in the '80s, it was a thing. It was a thing, and the mainstream media used to really push it on current affairs shows, and then you go to school the next day and have to cop it. So it's interesting now, and we will come back to this. Actually, we'll come back to this a bit later in the analysis because there is another song that ties in with this theme. Moving right along, another majestic song, "Flight of Icarus." The band again really showing that they are very good at storytelling, and that's what I love about Iron Maiden. If you ask me what one of my favourite things about Maiden's music is, they are storytellers. They have the capacity, the ability with songwriting and music to take you to a certain time in history, and we see that with Flight of Icarus. They go back to ancient Greece, and they paint this picture of the kid taking wings held together with wax, flying too close to the sun and falling into the sea. Incredible. Now, notably, that was the single that gave them the most airplay in America, and I think it featured quite heavily on the US charts, and was a catalyst to them having their first platinum album in America.
I've got to admit, when I joined them on the UK tour in '83, I didn't know anything about Peace of Mind. I hadn't heard it. In fact, up to that point, I hadn't even heard Number of the Beast. So I had no idea what was going on because I was working with other people. I just didn't get the time. But that one track, Flight of Icarus, was the one song on that album that really stood out to me. It's just classic Maiden. It's just one of those songs.
Probably one of my favourite songs from the catalogue. I mean, the album version is quite slow. It's a bit of a plotter, but any time they've played it live, I mean, you listen to the recordings, some of the bootlegs from the World Peace Tour and right through the World Slavery Tour. I mean, they played it in a really much more quicker, and that pace gave the song better dynamics, in my opinion. And it's interesting that Steve Harris has actually mentioned that as well, that he's been quoted as saying that he'd wished that they had broken the song live before they actually recorded it, because what is on the record sounds quite different to how it, the vibe and the feel it had live. And I think they've perfected it now. I mean, the way they're playing it now on this current tour is amazing. So
You've also got the added guitar as well.
yes,
Yannick's sort of doing his own thing.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
I mean it kicks. It really does kick.
Yeah, look, that, and we should also say that the inclusion of Yannick Gers well, mind you, he was already there for 30 years before Adrian came back, but the inclusion of a third guitarist allows much more improved layering of the songs, and they can actually play the songs in the way that they were originally intended or envisioned. So, and Flight of Icarus, the way it's played now live is an example of that. So it's terrific.
It's also, again, going back to our last episode, talking about the theatrics. The theatrics on that particular song now is Bruce walking about with his fucking gas air guns, and it's, and the backdrops and everything. It works a treat.
That's arguably the best theatrical element I've ever seen on their shows throughout the whole career. It sort of wonders why they couldn't do that back in '83. I mean, really, it's not hard to imagine why they wouldn't have.
I think if they'd have thought about it, then they would have done it.
Yeah. Because again, we'll talk about this on the next episode, but the stage set for the World Peace Tour wasn't all that elaborate.
Very, very basic.
Very basic.
Very basic.
Yeah. Again, we'll analyse it properly on the next show. But moving on, the Trooper. Now I did not.
The money spinner.
The money spinner. I did not know back then. Back in 1983, 84, I did not know that the Trooper one day would end up being arguably their biggest song ever. I mean, I loved it. It used to give me goosebumps back then, and used to love hearing it. Now it's become one of those songs that they sort of have to play because I don't think they'd get out of the venue alive if they didn't play it, to be honest.
It's played to appease their sponsors.
Yeah, absolutely right. But again, the theme of war, along with Die With Your Boots On, this one deals with the Crimean War against the Russian army. Do you know much? What do you know about the Crimean War, Loopy? I have no knowledge of warfare at all.
Nothing whatsoever. Nothing whatsoever. I'm not big on history.
I am big on history. I like ancient history. I don't know anything about military history. So our wonderful listeners educate us about the Crimean War. Then we go on to Still Life. Now, Still Life has the introduction as a backward message. And
oh yes, that's my question. Here's my question of the show. How many people have actually played Nico's message? And how many people actually understand what it says?
Well, I never tried to play it backwards because I was always worried about ruining the record. I don't know if that's possible, but someone said to me back then, "Oh, don't play your record backwards because you'll ruin it." And because I didn't have much money back then, I was scared to ruin it. But
the needle works both ways. It doesn't matter. The needle works both ways.
Well, the 11-year-old me didn't know that back then, but
you can't do it on a CD though. That's a problem.
So this is a drunk Nico McBrain one night doing an Idi Amin impression, saying the following, and I quote, "Don't meddle with things that you don't understand." Now that was a bit of a piss take, and it goes back to the theme of Revelations and the controversy and accusations of sort of devil worship and that sort of thing. So the band almost took the piss and recorded a backward message with a message to those fundamentals, which I thought was
you also, I mean, considering it was shortly afterwards that Judas Priest had a lot of problems with those guys in certain parts of America.
Yes. Now Judas
Ozzy had problems with him.
Ozzy had big problems. Judas Priest problems, I think, were 84, 85, when those two guys smoked a lot of drugs and shot themselves. And the family's lawyers accused Judas Priest of
apparently it was their music that cause that to happen.
Yeah, so the backward
Sorry,
message.
but no.
Yeah, so the backward message apparently was do it or something to that effect, and these kids that were high on crack perceived do it as shoot yourself in the face. Um,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous.
Enough said.
Suffice to say, Judas Priest won. The legal team there lost, and we move on, and people are still rocking out. So that's good. Now, very interesting. To Tame a Land, which closes the album. Mind you, we've skipped a couple of songs, Sun and Steel and Quest for Fire. I really sort of wanted to focus on the highlights here, but To Tame a Land originally was going to be called Dune, and
Yes.
Dune was based on the Frank Herbert novel of the same name. Now, Luke B, you read many, many, many years ago. You've read Dune. I have no idea what it's about.
From what I remember, it was all to do with spice wars. And for some stupid reason, they were on a particular planet and they'd found a particular spice, but they had to be wary of these huge, giant worms that used to sort of jump out from the spice. And it's just bizarre. It really is bizarre. But don't really remember a great deal about it. I couldn't even tell you the main character. I know that Sting played the lead character in the film of the book, and they called him White Deep. And other than that, I can't tell you anything more deep. Yeah,
No,
I don't know.
I think your explanation is more than sufficient because I've not read the book. Look, if any of our listeners have read the book, let us know. Let us know what it's actually about.
Tell me what it was all about because I have no idea.
Because the way you're describing it, it sounds a bit like an intergalactic trade
Spice wars.
trade thing. So
Intergalactic spice war. Where have we heard that? Oh no, that was Star Wars.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, but so the interest now. Steve Harris was a fan of the book, and the lyrics only really make sense to anybody who knows the book and the movie. What the original plan was to actually include a written passage or a spoken word passage rather, from the book as an intro to the song. But Frank Herbert, the author, obviously learnt about this. I think they approached him about it, and he denied permission, and his agent sent Iron Maiden a reply, and I quote: "Frank Herbert doesn't like rock bands, particularly heavy rock bands."
And I love this. I love this.
And
carry on.
Yeah, I'll say it again. Frank Herbert doesn't like rock bands, particularly heavy rock bands, and especially bands like Iron Maiden. So
I love that because it is so two-faced. Because now you can actually get hold of an album, music from the film Dune, and the music is recorded by Toto.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah. It's hypocrisy. It's all hypocrisy. It's
total hypocrisy.
It's all double. It's all double standards.
Take it back, Frank. Take it back.
It was a dick move. I don't even know if Frank Herbert's alive anymore, but it was a dick move, and I think he lost out because
dick move.
Well, sorry.
Yeah, dick move. That's great.
It was a dick move. So I mean, the song again was going to be called Dune. So EMI, but pretty much EMI and Capitol Records were forced then to come up with to change sort of the title. So most of the European, UK, and sort of North American, Australian pressings, they were all that song was changed to Tame a Land. Somehow, though, the EMI offices in Italy and Portugal didn't get that memo. So those pressings, the first pressings of those albums, the song is actually released as June. And I have that right here. We're showing it now to the viewers, but this is the Italian pressing, and you can clearly see that the album is an official release. It was released as June, and I'd love to know the legalities of how they actually got away with that. But
Do you reckon those guys still have a job?
I don't know. It was 36 years ago. I don't know. I don't know. But
Yeah.
obviously those albums sold very, very well in Italy and Portugal. So.
It was probably some 65-year-old bloke who was just about to retire and went, fuck it.
I think it was a good little. I think it was a bit of revenge. I think it was a nice little. Inadvertently, it was Maiden sort of having the last laugh anyway. And it was funny how the Italians were the ones that did it. I'm sure it was
Yeah.
over a glass of wine, but
All four.
that's it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's the Peace of Mind album for you. So look, let us know. Let us know. Did you see the tour? When did you get the album? What's your favourite song on the album? Why? Can you shed a little bit of light on June? Can you tell us a little bit more about the UK tax laws and the extent to which Maiden benefited by recording their first album outside the UK? Our viewers are very many and varied in their sphere of expertise, so I'm sure we'll get some answers out of this.
Yeah, somebody out there will know more than we do.
Yep.
I mean, I was there for a part of it, and there's still stuff I'm learning. It's just goes on and on.
That's
But then
right.
we've got a podcast to do, so therefore, give us more to talk about.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the next episode will actually be the World Peace Tour. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to do a part 1 on the record, part 2 on the tour, the merchandising that came from that era, and we'll get that out to you when we do. So, as always, thank you for listening. Just a couple of shout outs. I'd just like to acknowledge the online Eddie the Head fan club. Big supporters of the show. Thank you very much. Also, thanks for everybody who has reached out to us and commented about the Paul Mario Day episode, which we did last time. That was received very well, and it was a lot of people enjoyed that. It was a terrific interview. Paul was just amazing, and we loved having him on the show. So, thank you, everyone. And that's a wrap for episode 6.
I just want to make one little point.
Go on.
If you don't have a copy of my book, please go to loopyworld.co.uk and get a copy now.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. It's a wonderful book. It's again, as we said this in episode 1, because episode 1 was all about the book, but I want to keep coming back to it because your book is very different to the other Iron Maiden related books out there. A lot of those other books were written by people from a sort of like a biographical point of view, where they were commissioned to write something or they weren't there at the time. Whereas your book, Loopy, is from somebody who lived Iron Maiden from the early days right up to and including the start of the World Slavery Tour. So it gives a unique insight into...
Well, up to the World Slavery Tour.
Yeah, sorry.
Not including, up to.
I'm sorry, yep, up to the World Slavery Tour. And it really gives insight into what was going on. Very, very unique. It belongs in every fan's collection, so go and get it.
And there's only 1,400 copies left.
I will get
So the first 1,400 copies get it for a special price of £10, which is normal anyway.
£10 is a great offer. I mean, how many Trooper beers make up 10 quid?
3 at the most.
Yeah, and how many people do we see smashing through Trooper beers at those pre-gig meetups.
It's frightening. It's frightening.
All right, so Rock in Rio tomorrow night.
Save yourself 3 beers and just buy a copy of the book.
Here.
It'll do your liver good.
Rock in Rio tomorrow night, and
Not mine.
This should be great. This should be great because it'll at least give us a pro shoot footage of the Legacy of the Beast tour. I'm off to listen to Peace of Mind, the Italian pressing with June on it. So, take care, everyone. We'll see you. We'll see you for the next one.
See you. Bye.
See ya. Bye.